Brilliant. All right, it's 7 p.m. So we'll make a start. Welcome everyone. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we'd like to acknowledge that the lands that we meet on today are the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with the country. We also acknowledge Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Item 2, attendance. So I have an apology from Councillor White. Are there any other apologies that anyone's aware of? No, brilliant. 2.3, are there any motions to grant leave of absence? No, no one's currently leave of absence. Non-attendance, I note that Deputy Mayor Shanks is not here at the moment, but I believe he's on his way, so he might join us at some later point in the meeting. Moving on now to item 3, so the public open forum. Is there anyone who's speaking at the public open forum? No, brilliant. Number 4 then, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to make before we move on? No, thank you. Confirmation of minutes. So is that? Yep. So the Mayor's happy to move that way. Can I please have a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Thank you. Item 6, is there any business arising from the minutes? No. Fantastic. Then on to item 7, decision reports. So 7.1, we first have the appointment of a deputy chair. So we have an officer's recommendation that would someone like to, would anyone like to nominate for deputy chair of the committee? Councillor Samble.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hennessy for the deputy position.
Councillor Hennessy, do you accept that nomination? Fantastic. Are there any other nominations for deputy chair of the committee? No. There being none, would someone like to move that way that Councillor Hennessy be appointed as deputy chair of the Corporate and Community Services Committee? Councillor Hughes, second. Oh, sorry, Councillor Samble's moved. Councillor Hughes seconded. All those in favour? Oh, unanimously carried. Brilliant. Now on to item 7.2. So we have Bronte Rhodes and Leon Budden in attendance to answer any questions which councillors may have. And we have an officer's recommendation. Would anyone like to move that way? Councillor Samble, would you like to speak to the item? Your microphone, yeah.
No, I think we can be very.
Oops, sorry. Apologies, bear with me first time chairing. I get the buttons right.
How's it going? 10-4 over an hour, right? But yes, I'd certainly like to hear. As I said, we're so very proud in Gawler to have our service clubs and what they do involved in our community. And at one stage there, we didn't know whether the carols were going to go on, and certainly last year's carols, I believe, were really excelled. It was one of the best events I'd been to for a long time. I think the other thing that stood out a mile for myself and my family was wandering around, and I've been around a fair while, and I hardly knew anybody. So they were guests and visitors to our community, and probably people coming and living in all the new developments around. So we're sort of catering for everybody at a special time of the year. So I certainly would like to hear what the Apexians have got to say tonight, and to totally support what they are doing in our town and in our community for so many.
Thank you, Councillor Samble. Do we have a seconder? Mayor, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with councillor Sample's comments. I think this is a really professionally run event. I usually get invited to support the event, and it's really quite impressive how the service clubs work together, but just the professionalism and they've taken it up a notch. Last year, I was really impressed with the IT and all of that stuff that happens behind the scenes. Leon generally gets very stressed, but he seems to calm down after a while when everything's going smoothly, which it always does. Yeah, it really is. I actually think that this event is a much more expensive event. If we had to pay people to do this, it would be far greater than what we are actually sponsoring it. For the $34,797, I think that it is a really important event. People love it. It's free. You do have to pay for food. You do get to see Santa. There's all sorts of activities that are happening during the event, and it's just a fabulous event. And as Brian said, there's lots of people that come and enjoy the event, and I think it's a really important Christmas event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll open that up now if anyone would like to speak to the motion. Councillor Hennessy.
A question, if I might, through the chair. In the recommendation, point 2 actually gives us some prices that says that if it's going up by $5,000, it'll become $34,797. And then there's a phrase about putting it up through a further indexation. I'm reading through the report on page 8. That then makes the total cost with the indexation of $37,059. In light of transparency, I wouldn't mind seeing that full amount put under the second dot point, please. Otherwise, it's a little bit confusing or misleading.
David, you'd like to speak to that?
So through the chair, we can't quantify the exact amount because we don't know what the March CPI index is going to be until that's released in mid to late April. So we can't actually quantify that full amount, including the CPI increase, until that time. In the report, it notes that we are estimating a 6.5%. That's estimation. I would be not wanting to put in a definitive figure because we don't know what that CPI is until later in the year.
You're happy with that answer, Councillor Hennessy? Would like to add something?
Yes, please. I understand that, but the price is going up considerably more than $5,000 though. I just want that noted somehow.
Thank you. Councillor Kosh.
Look, I've got 2 questions. Similar to what Councillor Hennessy was saying about the actual cost. I just want to know, get an understanding about the GST. This is excluding GST. So is it another 10% on top of that? No GST? Okay, it's no GST. Just the other one is in the costs in our attachment. There was a traffic management plan, so there was no cost for the implementing that plan. Is that right?
Just remind councillors to ask questions to the chair, but Leon, would you like to respond to that? Yep. Yep. Just if you could press the button. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Kosh. Apparently it's in my report, which it is. The traffic management plan was actually implemented by the town of Cawler and covered as in-kind sponsorship, I believe. I'm not sure the actual cost of that. Perhaps David Barrett could answer that a bit more specifically if required.
Yeah, but do you have a follow-up on that, Councillor Kosh?
Yes, I would like to actually get that figure, please, because, for example, there potentially is going to be a street fair. There's going to be a street parade, and there was a cost involved there. So I just want to get an idea around what traffic management is actually costing council.
Right, thank you.
Because that would be an example.
You have that figure, David?
So through the chair, the exact figure I don't know. We do provide 5,000 in-kind support to the Carols for staffing contributions, the park hire and traffic management, but this traffic management doesn't involve the full closure of roads. It's community event signage, so it would involve staff putting out community event speed restriction signage on Lindop Road and Union Street and returning them, so the cost would be minimal in terms of traffic management in that regard.
One more, councillor Kosh.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go on a bit about this traffic management because, for example, at the Fringe, from my understanding, we have the signs go up and we have a staff member there constantly for the 8 hours and we pay that person for 8 hours to sit with those signs. So I'm just surprised that we're not doing that with this. You know, I just want to make sure it's consistent across all the events. Because it sounds like we're not having someone sit in the ute for 4 hours managing those signs, but at the Fringe, it sounds like we do. And I will follow that up with the Fringe because that seems to be quite a big cost. So I just want to be really clear about what we're spending on traffic management because it will come up with the parade. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor Shanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that, is it true to say that Walker's Place is actually shutting down a street? So we have to shut that down for that event to happen. But as David pointed out, that is not happening at Apex Park, for example, and there's some difference in there just to provide some clarity.
David, is that correct?
So through the chair, the two traffic management exercises are different because as Deputy Mayor Shanks says, Walker Place is a full road closure. Whereas for the Carols at Pioneer Park, it is only signage to say community event and monitored through our staff member who's on site that day, which is included in the 5,000 in kind. But I can get a cost breakdown for council, but I'd need to take that on notice.
So councillor Kosh, if it's another question you can ask, but you have already spoken in part to the motion. So if if that's a question, that's fine. If you just
Same issue. I mean, I've got a ticket that allows me to do traffic management. And once the sign is up, from my understanding, someone with that ticket has to be there to manage those signs, regardless if it's a road or whatever. That's my understanding of the legislation. So anyway, I look forward to finding out what it is.
So that's the question, is that?
Well, I just want some because Councillor Shanks has made a comment.
Yeah.
I'm making a comment because I've actually got the ticket.
That's right. So that's a question. So is that correct, David? What councillor Kosh has said.
So through the chair, I'll need to take the breakdown of traffic management costs on notice and provide that through to council. They are different traffic management costs for those two events.
Nice, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the motion before that's put? We had that as councillor Samples move that. So you're happy for that to be put, councillor Sample? Is it if it's a comment, you've already spoken to the motion, but if it's a question, it might have applied, isn't it? Apologies. Yeah, no worries.
Just want to make a final comment. I just heard Mr. Barrett say that the Fringe event is a closed road. I would have thought that Julian Terrace and that road would have been closed roads on such an event, the size of it. So maybe that needs to be looked at because I just get very annoyed when we, as a town of Gawler, own those roads, why it costs money to shut them. We should be able to just put the barricades up and that's it. And I agree with councillor Kosh. I don't very often do that, but I agree with councillor Kosh that it's one of those things where I think we're getting a bit carried away with some of these, guards and signs and everything, the whole lot. We're not in Moscow. So I'd ask everybody to support this motion, please.
Thank you. I'll put that now. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Thank you. Right. Moving on now to item 7.3. So this is the Economic Development and Tourism Plan. So I had a request to suspend meeting procedures in order to have a discussion about this item. So I believe that's you want to move that way, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Davies. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. need to call again. Otherwise, yeah, fantastic, Karen, yeah. Fantastic, all right, so, how would we like to? Yeah. Yeah, so David, would you like to make a couple of comments about this and then we'll invite Leonie up to speak?
Thank you. Through the chair, something to firstly outline is the additional paperwork on your desks. Apologies, when we pulled the Excel spreadsheet to PDF to include in the attachments to the agenda, it missed the last page. We will update the website and the hub accordingly in electronic formats, but they're the last pillars from the economic development strategy and tourism plan that weren't covered. Council has been working extremely collaboratively with both the Gawler Business Development Group and Regional Development Australia, Barossa Gawler Light out of Adelaide Plains on implementation of our Gawler economic development strategy. We've also internally been working quite hard on implementation of our tourism plan. You will note from the actions that are a number of gaps that are not started, ongoing, in progress, that we have been moving through. The reasons for the not started is essentially resourcing requirements and other priorities. As council's aware, we don't have a dedicated economic development officer, and that is part of the reporting to the committee tonight and for consideration of that through budget processes to assist with more implementation of these strategies. We need that extra resource to continue that implementation and do it better, and also enhance our collaboration with our other partners in Gawler Business Development Group and Regional Development Australia, Barossa Gawler Light, Adelaide Plains. We have representatives from those organisations here tonight. I think we'd move to Leonie's presentation first so that the members can hear from RDA, but if Henry wanted to have any other words.
Yeah. I can just have the vote. It's a round vote. So just ask. Yeah. We've already. You did, yeah, it was 2/3. It was over 2/3. Yeah, no, it's, yeah. All right. Oh, was, yeah. Thanks, Leonie. Yeah.
Thank you. And Sarah, I've got a presentation. Thank you. Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having us along tonight. I'd like to acknowledge our chair, Rolf Binder, is also here. I'm sure he'll jump in if I miss anything. So I have done a presentation for tonight, also happy to take some questions. There's also a local government communique that we do every quarter that we've finished the most recent one today, and I can leave some of those for you at the end, which provides some more detail to the content today. So I just want to start off by talking about some of the challenges that we have from an economic development point of view in the region. So obviously population, we need to have sustainable communities in order to be able to provide services ongoing. Obviously for a satellite city like Gawler, you've got a huge amount of growth planned for the region. So the population challenges are different for Gawler than what they might be for other parts of our region. So it's really about understanding what are the pressures that those population changes are going to have on us for a region, and how do we work together on those. Workforce, I'm sure if we had a queue of businesses here tonight, their number one issue would be workforce. So what we try and do there is obviously understand what the nuances of that are like for our region. So, but we know that we need more people in a range of occupations across the whole region and a range of skill levels. So obviously, again, in terms of skills, we need to upskill our workforce and reskill our workforce. And with the housing challenges, which I'll get to in a moment, we need to really have a look at what's our ability to actually unlock that latent capacity. So how do we maximise the participation rate? How do we find ways of actually re-engaging people in the workforce and also retaining people in the workforce? So people who may be looking to retire or have already retired, can we entice them back, that sort of stuff. So it's really trying to work out, where's that workforce going to come from and where will the skill set come from. So housing is, again, an interesting conversation to have for our region, because we do have a decent housing pipeline of growth. but is it the right level of housing that we need to attract the workforce that we need? Is it the right level of housing to allow people to downsize, to age in place and to remain in our community? So I think part of that conversation for us is moving forward is to really understand what is the diversity of housing that we need? What does that look like? And how is that going to help us attract the workforce that we need? Sustainability obviously is huge. And you have recently had a presentation from Tony Burfield from our team around Hillier and Cudler and the value of that primary production land in terms of jobs and output. So I guess it's really having that conversation extended to say, what does sustainable land use planning look like? How can we maximise our efficiency in our water use and accessing the quality water that we need? What will energy use look like for our region? And what is that? How can we work together to make sure that we are sustainable moving forward? So obviously key to planning and decision making for any decision maker is access to quality evidence. So again, there's a need to have trusted, reliable data, intelligence and information about our whole region to actually inform decision making processes. And as you obviously would be aware, there's some fairly significant conversations and discussions to be had in terms of regional land use planning, just as an example. And we also need to have clear priorities. One of the things that RDA does provide to its funders and its stakeholders is that we can actually play that role of we are bipartisan, we are trusted, we are independent. So we can have some of those conversations to actually bring people together to agree on what our regional priorities are and have that united voice. And obviously, again, collaboration is key in order to actually make efficient use of our resources collectively. And be able to actually have a unified position, to other levels of government and decision makers. We really need to have that strong collaboration to unlock the huge potential for our region. So we know there's a significant pipeline of investment potential for our region, and we need to be able to unlock that investment in jobs by coming together to look at what are some of the sort of key enablers. In terms of what we do, there's essentially four pillars that we work under. So we support businesses. So that's basically through one-on-one working with businesses to help them understand what their challenges are, what they need in order to be able to grow, help build their capacity and capability. And we do that in various ways. We also provide support in terms of actually, having sector-based support. So actually looking at what are the growth sectors that we have and what do those growth sectors actually need in order to have them move forward as well. So we facilitate access to both advice from our RDA team and also B2B, business-to-business support providers in terms of actually trying to understand what that support can look like. In terms of investment attraction, again, we work with businesses, with developers and regional stakeholders to actually facilitate some of those projects. So where there's a potential project, we can help, work with the various parties involved to find out, again, what are the key enablers to make these things happen? What do they need? We also feed that into a bigger picture pipeline of investment that we can then represent back to state and federal government in terms of getting support for those key enablers. So again, in terms of those key enabling things like workforce and housing, access to water, that's where we can play a role to actually advocate for people who are looking to invest to make those pathways easier for them. As I said, in terms of regional advocacy, we do provide a bipartisan, independent, informed voice, and we can really gather good data to share intelligence and establish those priorities. And this is an area where I'm keen to work with all four of the councils in our region moving forward to really do some strong engagement and get some strong unity around what our priorities are that we can then feed into that state government planning process in particular. We also play a role, so because we exist in regions, we are again a trusted vehicle for government. And I think a good example of that is the state government is currently funding us and all RDAs to have a regional community leadership program. So that's obviously, it's not directly economic development, but that's part of that, you know, enabling our region to be strong. And that's because we are a partner that the state government can rely on. They have funded us to do that work. So we do, yeah, we connect all parts of the puzzle in terms of businesses, investors, government at different levels, industry sectors, and we can play that, that joined up role. And in terms of how we do that, as I've mentioned some of these before, we have a team that provide one-on-one business support. We also have a B2B support program, and we provide grant assistance where we actually promote and identify opportunities for grant funding. And then we can also advocate for those businesses and provide support to help them to attract that. Investment support, again, both investment support for individual projects that have are in the pipeline of development, as well as sector development. And some of the key focus areas we're working on at the moment are creative industries, food, primary industries. And we play a different role in sectors such as health, where it might be that workforce is our main area of advocacy, and that then links into other areas of what we do. We also do research and projects. So we attract grant funds to undertake specific pieces of research that can inform both the work that we do and the opportunities for business and investors for our region. And as I said, we play that regional connection role in terms of, as I said, the community leadership program is an example. We do township economic development. So actually working the township groups and other, you know, key stakeholder groups in a township to work out what its role is in the region, how it works together, and those types of conversations. So collaboration and advocacy, again, as I've already highlighted, is going to be, I think, a really important role for us in terms of the next year of planning by the state government with the update of the Greater Adelaide Plan. Working, you know, how can we actually represent back to state government what our regional priorities are and be part of those conversations about where infrastructure will be delivered and where and how we'll grow. Housing, again, in my previous life, I just come from doing 10 years of consulting. I did a whole of South Australia wide housing project on the housing crisis. So I really want to understand, like I said earlier, what does the housing crisis look like for us in terms of worker housing? And how do we represent that back in terms of their, for example, now being an Office of Regional Housing, how do we connect in with that? Education, we have the Barossa Regional University campus, and we will be working with Gawler in terms of outreach to help with the Gawler facility that you've recently launched. And workforce and skills, again, is understanding the challenges as well as we can and providing some advocacy back to government in terms of programs that can assist with that, trying to actually connect industry and business to potential students and potential workers, and seeing how we can actually match the current vacancies and that pipeline of workforce moving forward. So in terms of how you can stay up to date with us, not sure what I've done there. Oh, thank you. So we do have a weekly newsletter. Like I said, I'll leave behind our quarterly update for you. But otherwise, there are other ways of staying in touch with us as we, you know, update the community on what we're doing. So thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Leonie. Just remember, we also have Karen Rome here as the Executive Officer from the Gawler Business Development Group, but we might start with questions about the presentation and then move on to questions about the broader item. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, just in terms of regional advocacy and sort of agreed regional priorities, I think something that we've been looking at in the context of all of this growth, Concordia, Roseworthy, is there's a lot of infrastructure that we haven't really heard from the government about what's going to happen with hospitals if we increase the population by 40,000 people and just continue using the Gawler Health Service, and what's going to happen with the Gawler Central train station. Is that going to be extended? If it is going to be extended, how will that affect Murray Street shutting down every 15 minutes, every half an hour, for example? If it's not going to be extended, how are we going to deal with all the people from Concordia and Roseworthy, for example, who will commute by driving into Gawler Central Station and staying there for the day? Like, you know, and that's something that a commitment from the government on you know, a multi-story car park there or that kind of thing. That's just from my views are sort of regional priorities for the upcoming growth. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Thank you for your question. Absolutely. We actually had a conversation about that today. We had a regular catch up talking about your economic development plan. I've put a call in today to the State Government Planning and Land Use Services team, because I actually want to understand to what depth they're actually going to do their investigations as part of the Greater Adelaide Plan on things like the health facilities, the health workforce, the journey to work, where people will work. So again, I've been involved with that team in the last 12 months, and they are a great team, and they are definitely listening in terms of these needs. What I don't know yet is what their resourcing is going to be and how deep that will then allow them to plan. So on that basis, that's why I'm keen to actually get the 4 councils around a table to have that conversation, because each council has housing growth that's forecast and population growth that's forecast. And if we are able to actually have, again, you know, might be a utopian view, an agreed idea of where the region is going to grow, what that's going to look like, and what the needs are. The Alinea group that you have engaged to do your car parking study has done some work in southern Queensland, I think, around, for example, access to rail. So putting rail in before the population goes in. So there's some of the conversations we can actually have in terms of what's the opportunity to actually be ahead of the game to in a perfect world, put the infrastructure in before the population goes in. So there's some great conversations that we can have. And as soon as we understand the depth of that planning from the state, we can work out what the gaps are and what we can do as a region to try and actually have some of those conversations ourselves. So at least when we go into that Greater Adelaide Plan conversation, we've got really good information about what we think the region needs.
So any follow-up there, Councillor Davies, or was that satisfied? Got Mayor Redmond.
Thank you, Leonie. Late last year, the RDA produced a strategic plan, used to be called the Roadmap, and there was virtually nothing in there about Gawler. We provided feedback. I haven't seen an updated draft. When will we see the updated draft?
Thank you, Mayor Redmond. So I've had a couple of conversations with CEO Henry in terms of the timing for providing that feedback, and we agreed it might be worth waiting after this conversation tonight to then provide that feedback. The board did discuss that at its February meeting. The challenge for us is that the plan was designed to be a high-level strategic plan for the region, not drilling down into a huge amount of detail on each part of that region. So what I would like to do is be able to move forward with that regional plan. I'll speak to that in terms of why in a moment, and then be able to actually do an update to that plan in the next 6 months, or once we've actually had the conversations that the councillor was referencing before, because I anticipate there will actually be a number of things that potentially may not be in that regional plan that should be. And there's a chance for us to then, do a revision to that. The reason that I'm needing to move forward with that, or we are as an organisation, is state government is imminently about to launch a Thriving Regions Fund, I believe it's called, and it has to refer to a regional plan for each region. So I've had to put that in there for the moment as a holder. I can go back and revise that at any point. But I guess what I would like to do is, I can respond to the letter line by line in terms of trying to have a look at that. What I talked to the board about was what I want to do in doing that piece of work, and I apologise for not having given you a response yet. I've just challenged currently to get everything done. I can put that back to you to try, and if there is currently an imbalance in terms of Gawler not being represented, then that's what I can try and correct, and I'm happy to make that commitment to do that. But if it then causes a new imbalance where there's more detail about Gawler and less on the others, that's where I'm just a little bit challenged in trying to finalise the document. But I guess I'm looking for support in terms of being able to see that as a high-level document. It's not the only document that we produce. We also have a regional profile, and what I can do is seek to add that additional information potentially into the regional profile. So I apologise. I'm trying to balance a few needs at the same time.
So Mayor Redmond, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Thank you for that response, Leonie. I did read the document cover to cover, and Gawler was really not mentioned. The other councils were. I think if there needs to be balance, there needs to be some balance around the Gawler contribution to that document. And if that is sitting with state government currently, as it stands, we're not mentioned. And I think that's a shame. I think that I'm a little bit disappointed to hear that. I understand that you're hitting the ground running and you're doing an excellent job so far from all reports. Well done. However, you know, we pay just as much as anyone else. And I think that we deserve to have at least some mention in that document. And currently there's really not much, and I have read it cover to cover. And I think as mayor, I do get a little bit disappointed when that document is produced and it's sitting with state government, and we won't get a look in from thriving regional communities' point of view if they base it on that document. There isn't much about Gawler, and I think you talk about balance, it needs to be balanced. It's currently not balanced, in my view. And I don't think anyone who reads that document would have a different view about the contribution of Gawler. And it is very disappointing when I read that. I was actually quite shocked. I was very shocked. So yeah, I think there's more that certainly Gawler can do to contribute. I don't know who contributed to that document from a Gawler perspective. However, there's not much in there. And so, yeah, sitting with the state government, I think that's, yeah, we've lost a really important opportunity. I'll leave it to somebody else to speak on just the role of those high-level documents, and we do deserve to have a space in that document, and currently there isn't much there. So I'll leave it at that and let others have a say.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that point's been well made. Would you like to respond briefly to that, Leonie? I'm allowing some extra latitude because we have suspended meeting procedures, but if it could be brief.
I take on board what you're saying, Mayor Redmond, and I'll go back and have a look at both the document and the letter, see what I can do to redress any imbalance that's there currently, and I'll put a response back to you, itemising what I have been able to do with that feedback. In terms of that being a document, the document was actually lodged with the federal government, I think back in December. That was the meeting a requirement of the federal government. The state government will have that document referenced in a process that applicants go through. I can update that on any day of the week. Yeah, so I can update that document next week. So the fund hasn't been released yet. I can update that document. And in terms of any concerns about all the projects somehow not qualifying, I will also have that in my mind when I reread that document.
Thank you. Thank you for those commitments, Leonie. Would anyone else like to ask a question? We've got, I think, Councillor Hughes was first, and then we'll come to Deputy Mayor Shanks.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, through the chair, you're probably aware that Gawler Council is looking at employing maybe an economic development officer. Is there an opportunity for council to get a grant or work closely or partnership arrangement with the RDA in this position, so we can get probably the best benefit also with the business development group as well as the RDA? Or have you got any thoughts in this process?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, so when I answer, please let me know if I haven't answered the question. I'm glad you raised that, because that's actually something I had mentioned earlier and had omitted doing so. I would like to throw my full support behind Gawler as council, supporting the resourcing of an economic development officer. It will work really, really well alongside both RDA and the Gawler Business Development Group. With more, we can do more. And I think what you hopefully have seen from the report that the team put together tonight each of us is adding value. There is more value that can be created by actually having a dedicated resource at Gawler. In terms of working in partnership, we would absolutely want to work in partnership with that person. So where we currently have a regular catch up on how to actually move the actions in the plan forward, we'll have greater ability to do that. So please let me know if that does or doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, and also whether there was funding available or grants available to help Gawler fund it, because it is quite expensive for us to have an ongoing position extra.
So I'm not aware of any funding that will fund positions like that. It would have to be, I would imagine, a particular project with particular outcomes that fit a particular grant in order to be able to have grant funding for an ongoing position that is a local government staffing position.
Apologies, sorry about that. I'm still getting used to the microphone. Go to Deputy Mayor Shanks now.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I think the collaboration approach through the region is very, very important. But what you're hearing tonight is when there's a slight imbalance, we can get a little bit, I guess, fed up with, well, why are they getting this and we're not getting this? And I think the sentiment there is justified, given the way the document and the approach has been in the past. I'm looking forward to working with you, Leonie, to try to, I guess, bridge that gap a little bit. Because our populations with our neighbouring councils are very much exactly the same, but there are mutual benefits that we can each target if we work collaboratively as a region. So I'm really, really keen to tease all that out. And I think it does start with, trying to understand the overall strategy and ensuring that the equal share is there, because as the Mayor rightfully points out, we're equal paying partners. So we do expect that return on investment to be clear when we're explaining it to our community. And just on the other point where we're talking about infrastructure, one of the things that I'd love to be able to get around, as Councillor Davies pointed out perfectly, is these sorts of key items that we need, because as you pointed out, we're the satellite city to a degree. The train stops here. We have a lot going on here that we have to deal with as the town of Gawler. So understanding what triggers need to be met to be able to get maybe that link road from Concordia and Barossa out to the Sturt Highway, and when that would happen would be fantastic. The train, what would have to happen to spark the conversation? And the Northern Expressway was put in before the development happened out this way, but it really activated that development. Now we're dealing with the fallout, or will be. So trying to ensure that we're in the right rooms at the right time to understand those trigger points, I think is very, very important, because, I love the understanding of advocating for us. I love the regional approach, but when does that result in the boots on ground action and what triggers need to be met? I think that message being clear would be fantastic for us elected members to answer the questions that we vet as elected members. So yeah, I look forward to contributing to those conversations.
Did you have anything to add to that, Leonie?
I need to say that's exactly the conversation that I'm keen to have with the Planning and Land Use Services team, Department for Infrastructure. So, and also working with the 4 CEOs of the 4 councils in terms of the potential for a sub-regional plan for this region that will give us that additional level of planning and potentially additional level of investigation that will support these conversations. Because as you would all know, any studies into one piece of infrastructure can cost significant amounts of funds. So if we as the region and the 4 councils had to actually invest in that, it would be significant. What would you invest in first? So it's actually trying to understand, what is the state government going to do? And part of that for me is actually getting a really good unified voice back about how important this region is to the state in terms of the feeder of this is where the housing growth is going to be. So how can we make that work the best for the state, providing the workforce the state needs, for example, for fly in, fly out, drive in, drive out workforce. So the faster we can get workers into the city and on a plane, the better that's going to be. So it's making those arguments, I think, about what the benefit is for the whole state in that investment as well.
Thank you. I'll just ask for questions from anyone who hasn't asked yet, and then we'll come back to a couple of people who have asked. I'm just aware of time because it is an important item, but we do need to keep ourselves moving. Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, thanks, Leonie. You're talking about speaking to the state government agencies. What is the role of the developers in providing infrastructure? For example, the North Eastern bypass, I would have thought that would have been funded by the developer. I thought that's my understanding that they would be doing that. Is that right? And have we actually got a commitment yet from the developers to build that road?
I haven't been involved in those discussions, so I definitely have no commitment from anyone. I guess I think it would be, it's from my understanding, and I will defer to the planning knowledge in the room. It's about, for example, with Concordia, it's around the structure plan that's being put in place for that and some of those conversations that are happening in relation to that. So each development, those discussions would have to be had, I would imagine, with state government, local government, about who's going to provide infrastructure and when, and what those contributions might be, where there are developer contributions, how they're going to be used, what are they going to be used for, what guidance do you want to actually give in actually setting development rules. But I would defer to planners in the room to add anything to that.
Henry, would you like to add to that?
So members would be aware specifically relative Concordia and the planning that's going into it. And unfortunately, we haven't been at the table up until recently, and it was only as a consequence of the Planning Commission coming to visit Gawler, where the Mayor and I hosted them, and we expressed our concerns about the lack of understanding about where the planning was at re Concordia. And then that triggered an invitation by the Barossa Council and the developers to be updated. But since then, we, by way of Andrew Goodsell, we are represented in terms of a working group that's been established by the state government. As you know, we are scheduled to provide a briefing to elected members in the next week or so by our colleagues in state government in terms of the planning that's going on to date. Yes, that is intended to be a confidential briefing, and I'll get back to Councillor Shanks in terms of clarifying why, but it's basically as a consequence of the state government asking for it to be confidential. And so it'll be at that briefing that we'll first really hear the details of where the conversation is going. And critically, it needs to be what contributions are going to be paid by the developers for infrastructure. But at the moment, it's only just recently that we're at the table in terms of having those conversations, and hopefully we can make sure that we impress upon everybody the requirements relative to the Gawler community.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity yet before we move back to others? No, in that case, we'll go Mayor Redman, and then I think Councillor Hughes may have had a question.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, Leonie, about the Thriving Regional Community Fund. Will the town of Gawler be eligible? You mentioned that you weren't quite sure whether Gawler would be eligible.
So the community fund is currently out already. The next fund is I believe it's called the Enabling Infrastructure Fund. The guidelines for that fund are currently on the minister's desk. So I'm not actually privy to what the final guidelines look like, but my assumption is that Gawler, as a region under an RDA region, would qualify. My comment before about your concern was more around your concern about the lack of Gawler specific information in the regional plan, that would somehow preclude projects from being included. So all I was saying is I'll have that lens in my head when I reread it again to be thinking about what that could amount to, and potentially that might be another conversation with yourself if possible, in terms of when I've got a redraft. So okay, is there any concern about what type of project would potentially miss out from anything that might be missing?
Councillor Hughes, did you have a question?
It's probably more a statement a bit along the lines of what the Mayor's been saying, and even Deputy Mayor Shanks. Our population is really similar to the Barossa and even our capital valuation of our properties in Gawler and Barossa are similar. I think Barossa is slightly in front, but this is quite a productive area. I mean, it is mainly residential, but we do seem to miss out on a lot of infrastructure, and the council, the last few years we've pushed hard for grants and got grants, but we haven't really seen the support that we'd really like from the other partners in the area to actually help Gawler. We seem to unfortunately be doing a lot of, well, trying to do lifting on our own. And as been mentioned, the Link Road, trying to get the rest of the Barossa through to the Tiver Road lights, hopefully using a bypass of Gawler, and also to the Sturt Highway, major infrastructure projects. But we really need a lot of assistance and a lot of help to actually get these major projects and sort of help, I suppose, the southern Barossa, but also Gawler really needs a lot of assistance.
Respond to that briefly, Yoni.
Thank you. And that is part of the conversation, Councillor Hughes, in terms of having a regional picture of roads of significance in terms of whether that's journey to work, freight routes, tourism routes, and that's where there can actually be joint advocacy, because having upgrades to those routes will help that whole connectivity point of view. In terms of getting access to federal and state grants, again, it's about having a look at that. What role does Gawler play within the region for the state, and mounting that argument and looking to, I guess, that regional position in terms of where there are agreed regional priorities and they sit in Gawler, then you will have that regional view behind you.
Thanks. Councillor Davies, you had a question, and then we'll come to Councillor Koch.
Yeah, so this one's, I guess, probably maybe the business development group might have some thoughts on this as well. But in terms of investment attraction, the main street of Gawler, Murray Street, getting, I guess, the right kinds of businesses in there to make it a thriving place, because this is something that I guess, you sort of bring it up amongst council and we say, well, it's council doesn't decide who goes into those properties, but there is a level of, if we're missing out, if we're not getting certain kinds of bins, if we get an employment provider or something, the only people, they could go in an alleyway and they would get the same number of customers, as opposed to a hair salon or something like that. Do you have any thoughts on, I guess, activation of the main street?
Thank you. And again, this is a conversation we had today. It's a good prep, that meeting today. This is again where I would love to work with Town of Gawler as elected body and the team moving forward in terms of what is the vision for Gawler. What is the city going to look like in 2030, 2040? Because that helps us paint a picture for investors. When we start to understand what the growth is going on, in and around Gawler, in terms of the number of people that's going to bring to Gawler, what's that going to do to, its capacity to support all sorts of businesses. But the look and feel, the character, the amenity, that's obviously driven a huge amount by council and also by others who invest in it. If council has a really strong vision for what that looks like, and there are examples from around Australia that you could look at in terms of, we would like to be a bit like this or something like this, it gives everyone a clear picture of what that can look like. So things like having you've got, I think it's at 9 pubs, not a huge amount of restaurants, so what can a restaurateur understand about what Gawler is going to look like in 10, 20 years, and therefore what are they investing in? So that's again a conversation I'd love to have ongoing with you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Councillor Koch. I'll ask a question and then we might start to wrap it up. Councillor Koch.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Question about infrastructure again. What's your view on signed infrastructure agreements with developers before approvals are provided?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to have a view, Councillor Koch. The housing work that I did, which was the whole of South Australia, look at the housing prices. We looked at infrastructure agreements, and there are some very good examples around the place. So I guess it's really having that understanding. There's also bad examples, in terms, I won't name councils, lots of growth down south, where there's no infrastructure. So I think it is about that shared conversation and actually understanding what your ability is under the, the Planning Design Act to actually put really good infrastructure deeds in and actually set, again, having a vision to say, this is what we want Gawler to look like. So therefore the expectation on developers is that you fit in with that. So I think the more you can describe what you want, the better position you are in to get that.
I think Deputy Mayor Shanks is especially keen to ask another question, so I'll pass over to you and that'll be the last one.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Just quickly, so what I'm hearing, and I know I've asked you this question behind closed doors, but it'd be great to be able to build on this. If you had a overarching plan and that mapped out all of Gawler and had our current zoning as it sits right now, and then our aspirational zoning of what we want as employment zones, residential zones, retail, hospitality, accommodation, that would actually be quite beneficial to the RDA because it would actually clearly state what our vision would be in the 42 square kilometres that is the town of Gawler right now, with the ability to be able to update that plan and ensure it's fluid. That would be a useful document.
Absolutely, and there are a number of councils across regional South Australia that have done growth plans, are doing growth plans. And the benefit of councils doing that work themselves is that you have already made your decisions as an elected body about what you want to see, where you want to see it, and what you want it to look like, so that when other levels of government come and talk to you about a broader region or a broader conversation, you can have a really informed input into that. So without doubt, the better information and the better conversations you have had as an elected group about what you want, the better informed obviously you can be in those conversations. Because otherwise things can happen to you rather than with you.
Thank you. I'll just ask one question. It's a more specific question, just in relation to some of the stuff earlier in the presentation about that business support and that business to business support program. Is there currently many businesses in Gawler who are involved with that, and how does that tie in with the work of the Gawler Business Development Group? And Karen, if you want to share your thoughts on that as well, you can after.
Thank you. So my understanding is we have done a number of workshops in Gawler, both B2B workshops as recently, I think as last week or week before, that are actually targeted at business capacity and capability building. We've also done a startup series, or in the process of a startup series, which is obviously focused on startup businesses, and just having a look at some of the speakers that have been along to that, they're pretty impressive in terms of companies that have been sold for billions of dollars. So that's the one-to-many work. We are also working, I believe, with a number of businesses, and I can provide that information specifically to council afterwards, considering commercial and confidence aspects to that. So I guess that's where the more we can get our name out there and get people to understand what we do, the more businesses we can engage with. I'm also keen to do some sector engagement to actually, sort of find out, what businesses are here. For example, today we talked about export. If we can find some businesses in the Gawler area who currently are exporting and have them as case studies, we might then open some eyes in terms of the types of things that can be exported. So part of it is capacity and capability building, and for others, it's actually ideation and stimulating thought about what could actually happen here.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add, Karen, to that?
Yeah, just very briefly, everything that Leonie said is accurate. And for the last couple of years, probably the last 4 years now, the Gawler Business Development Group and the RDA have had an agreement whereby anyone that needs business assistance within Gawler, if we haven't got a specific expert based here that we can just grab hold of straight away, we refer them to the B2B program. And the Gawler Business Development Group pays the fee that's applicable for businesses to actually get that assistance. If the business then needs further assistance, we had a very well-known and long-term business 2 years ago, I'm going to say now, that needed ongoing assistance to be able to make sure they stayed viable. We all worked together to make sure that happened, and collaboratively, I think we're doing extremely well now with that.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Right, thanks. I'll just make a final comment. Thank you, Leonie, for speaking, and thanks for some of those commitments there. I think there's a strong sense in the room that some things at times can be out of balance in terms of looking at the broader region. And so thank you for those commitments of looking into investigating that and speaking with our council about how that can better reflect the region as a whole. Is there something you'd like to add, Councillor Hughes, quickly? Oh, yes. All right. Well, we'll have to move back into the meeting. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming out and speaking, Leonie. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Rolf, as well for coming down. So we'll move back now into normal meeting procedures. So Councillor Hughes, you're happy to move that way? Fantastic. And would you like to speak to that at all? No. Seconder, Mayor Redmond, would you like to speak to that? Oh, what's going on? Oh, sorry, but can someone turn the mic off at the end of the, oh, I can do it. Apologies. I'll get used to this eventually. I've had a few hiccups tonight, but we'll get there.
It's not straightforward, that's for sure. Yeah, look, thank you, Leonie and Karen, for your responses to quite a number of questions tonight without notice. So well done. I think Gawler is keen to collaborate with the RDA, and I'd like to see where that collaboration goes. I think we can do a lot better in that space. It is a two-way street, and so I look forward to Gawler being better represented in the region and having a greater say in the workings of RDA, because I think currently we're sort of down the bottom, and I think there's always, we can go up, not down. So I think that working together, collaboration is the key to having a successful relationship. And I think Gawler will always be keen to be part of the RDA. I don't think that's that's not in question at the moment. I think that being part of the RDA gives us greater capacity to have a say in the region. We're a key component, we're a satellite town in the region, and we provide many services that many communities in the region do not have. So we are a key player. So I'll leave it at that. I look forward to further conversation in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Kosh?
Yeah, look, I'll speak to the motion. I'm happy to support the motion. I just want to concur with the Mayor. When I read the roadmap, regional roadmap, I was actually disappointed as well. I found very little reference to Gawler, and some of the references were pretty thin on the ground. But I do congratulate the RDA for their research on the rural area, the Cuddler area. I thought that was a very good report, and it added to the narrative that we've had for the last 10 or so years about that area, and really highlighted the existing employment down there, the gross income that it produces. I think it's over $13 million, the number of people that are employed, and the potential for that area. So I thank you for that. So, and I do support the RDA, and I support our collaboration with the RDA. And I think it's been good. I'd just like to see the roadmap a bit clearer and a bit more brighter on Gawler. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kosh. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to that? Deputy Mayor Shanks?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I think as I stated before, there's definitely mutual benefits from ensuring that we're all on an even playing field, and having those collaborative conversations can really result in infrastructure that we all will benefit from. Not just one pulling one way and another pulling the other way. And I think some of the balance that can be restored on a strategy level can then come through into a council level. And as the Mayor said, it works both ways. We need to play a part in that communication as well. And I look forward to doing that. As for the tourism and economic plan here, you know, I get what David Barrett's mentioned tonight, and resourcing is an issue 100%. These strategic documents were endorsed in 2018 and I think 2019 to 2020. You know, it's 2020. Yep, for the tourism, correct. I'm seeing some. Oh, the economic development strategy. Thank you for the correction there. My apologies. I guess some of the actions that haven't been able to be established in this space, you know, the economic development and that space moves pretty quickly. So when we see these strategies and some of the actions that are tied to these strategies and then them not happening for years because of the resourcing, some of that to try to get in front of would be great. And that's just some constructive feedback there. I'm not having a crack. I understand the ability of being able to get staff where you need them at the time you need them. But I guess the point being is we've got 2 higher level strategies here and we've got a lot of not started, and we're seeing that recommendation of the resourcing coming in at 2023 on strategies that were endorsed, you know, 3+ years ago. So just a comment there, because there's some great actions here and I'd like to be able to see them being ticked off, and I'm you know, I guess more comfortable seeing the economic development officer put forward. But yeah, just one of those I guess noticing as an elected member, and as David rightfully pointed out.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, well, again, just echoing my support for the RDA. I think there's a lot. I think we've had, I mean, from before your time in the role, we've sort of had the critiques around sort of, you know, visiting the website and it's barossa.org and it mentions all of the Barossa things, and then we paid the same amount as the Barossa Council does. Whereas, you know, in something like Norma that we also participate in, we proportionally are involved, and then Salisbury, who gets a lot more, pays a lot more. And I definitely understand that the Barossa wine region is obviously a huge part of anything that you would want to talk about for economic development strategy. But I think the reason that Gawler is part of this group in the first place is that we're also part of that strategy. And just, want to make sure that that's not lost. So we'll definitely keep discussing that in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? Would you like to speak on that again, Councillor? Are you happy that that's put? Otherwise, all those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 7.4. So the draft 2023 to 2024 activation budget. Would someone like to, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move that? Is that, oh, is that, so apologies there. David, apologies, David, you'd like to?
So through the chair, we've just updated the motion on screen for members to remove the duality of motion that was presented in the agenda based on the decision of the committee around the Carroll's funding. This motion is presented to include that $5,000 additional. So just wanted to be clear on that we've removed the additional wording for the or.
Everyone's up to speed on the impact of that. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, David. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Davies, would you like to speak?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think activation around the town is a very valuable part of what we do as a council. And I think we've had some big successes. Recently, I think that I went along to the Gawler Fringe opening, and that was quite good, quite well attended throughout. you know, it's unfortunate with the Walker Place situation, the sort of costs that do pile up, but that's nothing to do with the Gawler Fringe event. That's the infrastructure of Walker Place. But yeah, I'll move this motion.
Do you have a seconder for the motion? Seconder, councillor Hennessy, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second this. I'm really pleased that we have a report that outlines all the different aspects of an activation budget, which clearly states what we are seeking, what we are supporting rather, and the costs involved, and also allows an amount that allows us to be flexible and respond to the community when other ad hoc ideas come forward. My only comment is that I suspect as our budget situation becomes more and more challenging, we will continue to need to investigate and review this to make sure that it is reflective of what the community wants and also what council has put into its community plan. There's always a chance that we become the same old, so I think we need to look at this clearly each year and just make sure that this does reflect an up-to-date and responsive situation, but I'm very happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Hennessy. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Koch.
Yeah, look, I also support it this year, but I would really like to start to drill down to some of these costs, because some of these costs to me look a bit extravagant, especially around traffic management. That was the issue I was bringing up before. And I was just wondering, just through the chair, will we be getting a breakdown of the Walker Place Fringe event sometime? There's a figure in there of $50,000. I assume that's for all the Fringe events, or is that just Walker Place?
David, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, through the chair, we will have a Fringe wrap-up report. I believe it'll be coming to the May CCS, so May meeting of this committee, that outlines all those spends in each of the categories. But the funding that's allocated in there is for all of Gawler Fringe.
Thank you. Mayor Redmond, you'd like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this, in particular, as it will be further considered through the budget deliberations. I agree with what councillor Hennessy said before, that we are facing challenging times with our budget, and I think that nothing is off the table when we are looking at efficiencies and particularly cost efficiencies. So I think that I'm happy to support it at this stage, but yeah, there may be some changes as we go through the budget deliberations. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I certainly support this. There's no doubt about it. But I just heard Councillor Davies said that yes, the Fringe was well attended. One of the big things that I can't get around my head is that recently I did a good trip around Victoria, and I went to numerous events over there. Every event I went to, there was an entry gate, which there is. And there was a couple of young people, I would say they may have been service clubs people or youth groups or whatever. And they asked the question, hello, welcome to this event. Could I have your postcode, please? Now you might think, well, that's a bit corny, but guess what? You know how many people have been to that event. As Councillor Davies said, it was well attended. How many people did attend? The carols I spoke of. How many people did attend? No one knows. And I was reading here about the Autocycle event, which is not our event. It's actually, you know, it says here that 145 spectators attended the event, and we spent $2,500 by sponsoring it. But it wasn't the Gawler Wheelers, who are a fantastic wheeler group in the town, that had anything to do with it. So I think, as everybody's saying, we've got to be careful. This budget is in a bit of a hole. The Anzac Day, how many people attended the Anzac event? How many's going to attend this time? And one of the biggest faults, a fantastic event in every year that we've had, but the failure was a PA system. So I'm hoping, and it's not written in here, but a decent PA system as they had at the Christmas carols and things like that would certainly make that event a real extreme event. And we've got to do it better by knowing who comes to these events. It might be all right to say, I was talking to somebody the other day about the food event that they had down at Essex Park recently and so forth. And I said, oh, how many people attended? No one knew how many people attended, but when I went and spoke to the food stalls there, they were all very happy. They all did good on their sales and things like that. I think it's about time we just have somebody, and there's a lot of great groups, even if we paid them a small fee or some compensation for doing it, to know how many people are attending our events, even the Australia Day breakfast and all these sort of events, the tennis titles or the swimming carnivals and all that. Can anybody in the room tell me? And I don't think anybody can, because there's no record ever taken of who attends these events. So I'll certainly support this because it's very active and it's certainly spending money, but like I say, it's only money. And basically, we need to be a vibrant town, which we are, and we must support, but we've got to be careful how we're handing it out from now on, because it's going up so much each year that it does concern me.
Thank you, Councillor Sample. I might just ask staff, do we have any insight on those figures, or is that relatively correct, David?
So through the chair, we have anecdotal. So for example, the Carols reported that they estimated 3,000 attending. We would have anecdotal attendance figures for the Walkplace event coming up for the May CCS report. We don't have actual figures because we don't have closed gates to a lot of our major events, including Australia Day breakfast, Carols, Rotary Village Fair and those sorts of things. So there's no single point or of entry, so to speak, or multiple managed entry points. Unlike the Gawler show, which we do have that information that comes back to us, where they recorded record attendances last year, and that was reported through to council in January. The food truck carnival event, for example, was an external hire. The carnival itself would understand because that was a fenced entry event, but that's not a council event, so to speak, as a hire. So without doing fencing infrastructure around all the parks and managed entry, it's hard to get exact numbers.
Yep. Thank you, David. Deputy Mayor Shanks.
Just through you, Chair, am I able to ask for an update on the PA concerns that Councillor Sample raised in regards to the Anzac and some potential collaborative partnerships?
Thank you, David.
So through the chair, this is the subject of a report going to the March Council meeting, so you'll see it in a week or so. However, with council staff as well as the RSL and the Gawler Apex Club have been collaborating, and we've come to a point where the RSL will be engaging the Apex Club to deliver audio for both Anzac Day and Remembrance Day with larger public address systems. Council's also been installing some infrastructure in Pioneer Park to accommodate hanging speakers at height on existing light poles. So it's essentially welding some brackets on that the Apex Club can hang some speakers on to create that distribution across Pioneer Park. They'll also be putting a relay speaker around the base of the palm tree that's in the centre of the park. So it'll provide coverage of the entire site for those events. Very similar to Carols, obviously a reverse direction as Carols comes from the rotunda end.
Thank you, David. Councillor Deputy Mayor Shanks, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I'll be supporting this with the same caveat, I guess, of we need to ensure that we're scrutinising every line item when it comes to the budget process. There's no if, buts or maybes about that.
But the work that is done in this space, I think we can all agree is fantastic. I mean, if you go to these events, and I was shattered this year. I missed out on the Walker Place event. I had a prior engagement on, so but I've been the last couple of years. It's growing. I mean, my feedback to that would, I won't bore everyone with public toilet feedback, but I will say that the event is actually growing and it's well populated. It's almost feeling a little bit crowded in the area when you're going in there, and there might be scope to turn around and say, you know what, this is the uptake is so good, we might need to look at a bigger location, which, you know, I think is a really good testament to how the event's being run, how the uptake is consistently getting better, which means it's appreciated out there in the community. I look at these sorts of items as core services that council should actually be providing. The level we provide them, I think, is a really good thing, because what it does is it actually, you know, it actually promotes what Town of Gawler does, and what it's very obvious to see what some rates are going to and everything like that. So, you know, as some might not see it as footpaths and roads, I still see that engagement level as a very positive thing. That said, we unfortunately do come down to money, so we do need to do the right thing and scrutinise this to the same level as we would scrutinise any other budget item. It will be nothing. It won't be meaning any offence to it at all. Not saying anything will be cut, Linda, I promise, but I'm just saying that we do need to scrutinise these items and look at them for the dollar figures they are, and see if there's any efficiencies that we can pick up. So yeah, look, I'm happy to support this and look forward to being able to get the family to these events that are up and coming this year.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other discussion on that before we close that? Councillor Davies?
Yeah, just wrapping up. I mean, I definitely agree that we're going to have to look through the budget closely this year. That said, these aren't just spends, these are investments. You know, if the Gawler show's not happening, Anzac Day is not happening, the Christmas carols aren't happening, what we have is a worse town who's getting less visitors. You know, we need to understand that it's not just a matter of, oh, we can cut some things here and there. You know, if you look at the things that are on here, there's a lot of extremely valuable either events we're putting on ourselves or things like the Relay for Life that we're sponsoring that are quite valuable. So I guess I'll just leave it with that.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll close the debate. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 7. Item 7.5, the 2023 Mule Project. Mayor, you'd like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to have a crack at this. I actually really love the Gawler Civic Centre design, and I think that would really create some vibrancy. I'm not particularly concerned about B. I'm open to suggestions for B, but I think there needs to be some brightness instilled in the foyer. It's very cement, grey, and there's no colour. And I think that this would create a really lovely display. And it could be the start of many different murals that might be painted over that wall. As I said, I'm happy to take suggestions for B. I don't really have any further suggestions. Other people might decide, but I'm happy to move A and take suggestions for B if people so choose.
Moving that way, no.
Thank
So,
you.
Councillor Hughes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, happy to support that. I've got a suggestion for B. I believe it's private land though, but I'm thinking the Victory Square, the big wall coming back facing ANZ, it's described, but it's really that wall that so if we look out the window here. Yeah,
So that's one that's not contained in the,
yeah.
or, which, photo 4, so that's.
Yeah.
That's, photo 3, so that's on the side of the reject shop, is that?
Yeah,
what
that's
you're
the one,
referring to,
yeah.
Councillor Hughes? So, that's for everyone's reference, that's on page 41, that's
Thank you.
photo 3 there. Continue, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, no, that's my suggestion, but yeah, no, happy to be seconder for the motion.
You're amenable to that, Mayor? Yep. Happy with that? Councillor Shanks, you'd like to speak to the motion? Just a question.
Is there a process that we could do to go out for a community vote on all these spaces?
Might be a question for.
We've done it before in regards to design in this space.
Henry?
Yeah, through the chair, if that's what the will of the committee is to undertake a survey in the first instance, then we can do that. I'm sure it'll take a little bit longer for us to deliver, but it can be done, yes.
Yeah, I will go Councillor Hennessy and then come to Councillor Kosh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy with the Civic Centre, although if we move ahead with that, I found it very difficult. I was quite surprised that the design incorporated the three rivers, because I couldn't see that and I still struggle to see that. So that's a minor point. I do have great concern though about the use of privately owned walls. And I think it sets a precedent that I'm not a little bit uncomfortable that council rate should be paid on decorating a private property. If we were going to move that way, I wonder if we've investigated some type of cost sharing, because I believe it adds value to the buildings. So I'm just wondering, perhaps I could ask that as a question of staff. Have we looked at that possibility?
Yes, staff could answer that and maybe run us through also what that process would look like of talking to those business owners. Who's best to answer that question? David, can you respond to that?
So through the chair, first step in the process would be to have a discussion with the landowner, the building owner, so to speak, around whether it would be a potential for them. They may well come back and say, no, we don't want one, in which case it's off the table. If the answer is yes, we'd love one, then we would definitely be asking, okay, what kind of contributions could you make towards the proposal? Because for the funding we've got, if we were to do the Gawler Civic Centre wall, as well as an additional wall, the size of mural would not cover that expanse of that wall, for example, at the reject shop. I wouldn't have thought we'd have enough funds to do all of that wall as well as the Civic Centre. So we'd need to come back with what the design outcome is for what we can afford, or whether they wanted the full expanse, then it may be up to the building owner to fund the rest as well. Does that make sense?
Just on that, if and then we'll come to there, but just following on from that, if as Deputy Mayor Shanks suggested that it went out to a vote, would the owners be approached prior to that? Going out to a vote, I assume.
We would certainly have to approach the owners to see whether they were amenable to that being the process, certainly. And as Henry said, that would just delay the process slightly.
Just said we'll go to council. Is it along the same line, or we'll go to Councillor Kosh and then we'll come to Mayor Edmund if that's okay? Okay, Councillor Kosh, are you happy for Mayor to speak, or would you like to? You'd like to speak first, Councillor Kosh. Go to you.
Look, I'm actually quite concerned that we've actually included private buildings in this report to start with, without actually talking to any of the building owners other than JT Heating. I think I don't think that's a proper process, and I'm actually quite disturbed by that. I would have thought we would have spoken to them before it went into a public document. I would not actually be at all agreeing to putting any private wall on there without speaking to the owner, because I think that's just not appropriate. It's just really, I mean, later on we've got a policy about community engagement. We haven't even engaged with the people that own the buildings, and it's in a public document. I'm really horrified that it's actually there, so I definitely won't be voting for part B. Part A is okay, but yeah, not very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Koch. So Mayor, I believe you have a suggestion.
Yeah, I've got a suggestion. After hearing the debate around B, I think that I thought that private business owners had been, so no, they don't know that so I think we should take B out. I'm picking up on Deputy Mayor's suggestion. I'm really keen on getting the Civic Centre wall done, but going out for a vote. But I think before you do that, there needs to be discussions with these owners and whether they've got agreement to be part of a mural project, because otherwise what's the point? You know, if they're saying, if they don't want anything done and they say no, that's a wasted exercise. So
So you're amending that motion
yeah,
to have
well,
A kept
as the
in?
mover, I
yeah.
can change it.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm taking out
Sorry, not amending, you're changing,
B
yes. yeah.
because I don't think we've got enough information to go into discussions with these business owners because they don't even know that these walls are in this document. So I think that needs to be teased out. I really like Deputy Mayor's suggestion, and at this stage, I'm not sure which way to go, Deputy Mayor, but you might have some suggestions of, because I really like these walls, but at the same time, if these business owners haven't been discussed, I don't think they should be there without any engagement with them. So I'm going to hand over to you if you've got a suggestion of going out
If you're
for publicly owned property.
just because that's the motion has changed, but we'll go to councillor Lorna and then
Yeah.
come to Deputy Mayor Shanks and then see what's fit to do with the motion.
I don't see there's any problem with us having a look and identifying what walls are available and for us to engage with the owners of these properties and saying, look, we've identified your walls. We'd like to put them in for a proposal for a mural. I've got no issues really with putting on privately owned walls. We're worried about what we're going to do there. We spent so much money on roundabouts that we don't own. We spend money on infrastructure out on the highway that we don't own. So I don't really see what the big issue is by identifying something, coming into the council or having a look at it saying, yeah, I reckon that's a great idea, approaching the owners and saying, this is what we want to do. I'd have to seek leave. I'll just go to Deputy Mayor Shanks first. And then once we've got a motion that's being put, then we can speak to that again. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Shanks.
Yeah, I just if I can make a suggestion and then speak to it, if I could share, it would be something along the lines of that we add an additional point saying that we will follow up with the businesses that are identified here and see the appetite that may be available for utilising their walls for the beautification of the town. And then that report will come back and we can probably decide on what to do from there would be, I guess, my feel. But obviously it would have to be something like the mover would be happy with and the seconder in that space. But I think what that would do is capture the appetite in the private businesses, because, you know, if we are talking about the ability to contribute to a mural, that might be a deal breaker for some of these businesses, which, you know, or it might not, but it's their right to say yes, yay or nay. I actually agree to a degree with the sentiment on it actually puts some businesses on the map, because you'll start pinging the business of, oh, it's where that beautiful mural is, you know. On a personal note, the JT Heating is a great location for that kind of space, and it would be great to see. However, the reason the community vote was brought up, and also I don't think this report was put forward with any malice intent. For me, it reads like, you know, what is the appetite here in the chamber before we start approaching the businesses? However, I think the chicken and egg might have, might have just got mixed up slightly there. So I think there's a good opportunity here to have those conversations and see who actually would be interested in this space. But what I really like about the street art movement, which the report points out quite clearly that the community has been behind this since its birth, is we've always engaged to that community level very simply, and going out for those community votes, actually, if you remember correctly, ended up in the Centenary Lane mural, which has been well received mostly in the town as well. And having the two artists do the council infrastructure on both sides has again been well received. I agree with the mayor in adding in a great piece in the Civic Centre. I think that has been in the works for a while now, and it'd be great to see that come to fruition and also put it under the banner of, you know, Gawler Arts and a big piece mural. But for the next one, you know, I'd like to see a bit more opportunity for that community engagement and tease out, because I think all those walls would be fantastic. I mean, ideally, let's paint them all, right? But you know, I think there's a process that needs to be undertaken and bring those people along for the ride while bringing the community along for the ride as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'll move back to Mayor Edmund, but if we could, move the motion on this.
Well, I'm just going to
Yep.
change, I'm just going to add a couple of, picking up on what councillor Hennessy said in point 4, that put a comma after walls. Put a comma after walls. And opportunities for partnerships. I think that picks up on your point, and then I think we cover off on. I think that yeah.
So
I
we'll
think
just-
that might work. I'm happy with that. I'm not sure if Deputy Councillor Hughes is happy with it.
So we'll just, I think we'll find a better way to do this in the future because it's been quite messy trying to get a motion to move, but we'll go, I think Councillor Hennessy had a suggestion. We'll come back to Mayor to move the motion, then we'll go to Councillor, it's already been moved. Okay. In that case, we'll go to Councillor Hughes and then we'll come back to Councillor Hennessy. Oh, you're fine now? Okay, we'll come to Councillor Hennessy. Yes, yeah. Is it,
I'm seeking leave to speak.
You're seeking leave to
again.
speak again. So is leave granted for Councillor Hennessy to speak? That's it. So you wait a second. Also, is leave granted for Councillor Hennessy to speak? Please raise your hands. Yep, that's carried. Thank you, Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you. And like,
Oops.
right, thank you. I'm very happy with the amendment, because I am very much aware that there are some private organisations who have already funded their own walls. I'm thinking of Taylor and Forgy, I'm thinking of the RSL. I don't want this to become an expectation that council will always be the one that pays them. So I like the fact that we're going to deliberately go out and seek partnerships. I really like that idea. And it also occurs to me, I'm sure I'm pointing out the obvious, that it's not often the business operating, it may be that we need to talk to the actual owner of the property, which in most cases in Murray Street are two completely different people. Because the franchise owners have enough costs on there. They may not be able to fund this, but perhaps the owner might. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak? We'll go to Councillor Davies and then we'll come to Councillor Sample.
So in terms of the suggestions around a vote, presumably that would be at the next stage. Like we're selecting the Civic Centre wall, and then in terms of what should be on there, that comes to, and I guess that would be covered at, I don't know if we need to cover it in the motion, but you know, that would be, it would probably be good to, I guess, wording that a follow-up report. Yes, it's exciting. Lots of amendments. So yeah, a follow-up report comes back with options for a community vote for the mural, for the site. Yeah, or not picking the site, but a community vote for which mural is at the site.
Right, so that's the Gawler Civic Centre cafe wall, and then we're voting, or the community is voting on
Yes.
which mural goes back there. So is the idea that there would be multiple designs, or is that just?
Yeah, so this is what we did. It's the picture. So I think we'll pick the Civic Centre wall in this motion and then come back for the, because that's what we did. That's what we did last time. And so, yeah, if I'm happy to speak to it, if we're happy with what.
I
it
might
does.
just refer to staff. Is that possible? I would just refer to staff. Is that possible? Or is that going to divert resources in a huge way?
So through the chair, I just wanting to clarify the commentary. This vote is for the image for the yet to be decided wall? Or are we looking at voting on images for both the Civic Centre and yet to be decided walls?
Councillor Davies, what did you intend by that?
So this is about this wall. We've sort of just picked this as the preferred option. And so what I'm trying to get at is when this comes back to another, another agenda item for the council, that it comes back with considerations around the vote. But I don't know what the best way to do. I don't know. People looking confused. This is, it seems very simple to me. This is what we did last time. Right, we had options, yes, and that's, yeah, so that would be the idea that we would, I mean, I don't know if that you want another step in front of there first where we meet to shortlist, and then I don't know if this all needs to be in the motion. I'm just trying to make sure that everything's in here.
Yes, I'll refer back to the mayor to determine what we actually want to do with this motion, because I think we should clarify that and then we can ask questions and move forward. Yes, or we currently amending a motion on the fly, so I'll allow you to speak again and we'll find a better way of doing this in the future.
Thank you. The intention of the motion was to pick what was in the agenda, which is the design here for the Civic Centre wall, and the picking up on Deputy Mayor's suggestion, which was really about the location rather than the artwork. It was more about the location, because I don't think we've got to the point where we can pick artwork. And Linda's nodding there. There's a lot of work that goes towards that. So I wonder whether when the report comes back, that there's an opportunity to get a selection panel to pick preferred artworks and locations if that transpires, after discussion with the landholders. And then you could go forward with the community vote. So you could pick a preferred, that's what we did last time. We picked 2 or 3, 4 designs, went out, and people chose what they liked, which is, I think, a really good process, but it just takes a little bit longer. So we could, the report will provide options regarding locations, artwork, and community. Perfect. Perfect, Sarah.
David,
I think Sarah's nailed it.
So David, are you clear now on the intention of the motion?
Through the chair, I'm clear of the intention. I don't believe that at the May CCS meeting, we're coming back with artwork, because we need to ensure that we know the wall to be able to develop a concept design for artwork. So the intent would be the follow-up report with further information regarding the preferred location being the Civic Centre wall. So we'll have a full cost for that for you. And the outcome of the discussion with landholders regarding the other walls comes back for the committee to determine which wall it wants to pursue in the other walls. And then we will go out to market for art for that wall. And then we will set up the community vote for the artwork that goes on that wall. Does that make sense? So we don't need to cover that all tonight. There's
So
another
that-
couple of
yeah.
reports to come.
So that will be, so that will make sense and that will be, that can be followed by staff if it's moved as that is. And Mayor. So, and that's getting rid of artwork and community consultation, is it, Mayor? From that? And then that's the next motion. So you're moving that as, you can turn on your mic and just for the, don't speak to the motion, just for the sake of writing the motion.
So I just want to clarify that point 3 is to be further, as the preferred location to be further investigated. Well, we've got a picture in here. And I think that was the intent, to choose that picture for the Civic Centre Cafe wall to be further, as the preferred location to be further investigated, to be as the preferred location for a Civic Centre Cafe wall as included in the agenda.
Yes, Henry,
I've
please.
just,
Yes.
Yeah, if I could, David, it was the intention, or Linda, that the details of the Civic Centre wall, the image that we presented, well, we're presenting it for the council to, the committee to make a decision to proceed with that image? Or is that just an example of what we're looking at? So you're nodding, I can't, so it's yes, proceed with that image.
So
Right,
yeah,
okay.
it is to proceed with that image. Yep. Is that? Yep. Okay. So we'll just, so yeah, we'll just wait until that's. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next time, I think we'll might suspend meeting procedures or something to discuss that, but we'll just wait for that motion to be finalised. You can have a right of reply, but I don't think we need to speak again. It's getting a bit, yeah, no, it's a bit messy. We've had people have had sufficient opportunity to speak. Yeah. Yeah, no. Bit of a curveball for the first meeting, but that's all right. Is that final now, Sarah, or is that still being edited? Is that, that's okay, you finished editing that? So you're happy to move that way, Mayor? David, are you still happy to second? Oh, sorry. Apologies. Right, so we will wait for clarification from staff, and then staff, if you could give us the okay that is sufficiently amended and written on there, and then we'll move. And we'll just suspend meeting, please have a conversation and then move the motion or something. Yeah, but people are so controversial, but. Sarah, you're happy to proceed with that? That's you've made the amendments that you need to, David and Sarah. Fantastic. All right, thank you. And that's, yeah, no, I'm just checking they've written it correctly before, so that you, yes. We're just checking it's done so you're informed on what you're actually moving. Are you happy to move that way, Mayor? Yes, thank you. I'm not going to make you speak to it. You can speak again at the as a right of reply at the end. Councillor Hughes, are you happy happy to move that way. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Councillor Sample.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It was mentioned, I think, by councillor Hennessy and also councillor Davies. One of the big things whenever we're doing anything like this is to know who the people are that actually own the properties. And I don't think anyone in this room knows who owns the properties in the street. I've been around a while and I know a lot of people that own them. And one owner in particular up at the, what's the pub on the top of the street up here? Where Damien is? The Exchange Hotel. He and the owner have got a fantastic relationship. So consequently, you can see the fantastic arrangements that have been done and how that business is a vibrant place, probably the most vibrant place in Gawler at any particular time. And as Councillor Davies said to the RDA, how do we make our street vibrant? Well, the first people that should be on the bus with us are the owners of the properties. Now, I love the murals, they're good. And I've been trying now for probably 5 years to get the owner of Victory Square to fix up the two big mounds of dirt in such a beautiful centre in our town. And his answer to me is, well, council charges too much rates and they won't support us with anything like this and so forth. And we're talking about muralising his wall of one of these buildings of Zambirio or something or other and so forth. But next time you walk past there, just cast your eyes on what that looks like. A couple of beautiful trees, but underneath the area, which could be really beautified. And like if you want to go for a walk and see how it should be done, go for a walk around in front of Neighbourhood House. Every night before a meeting, I go for a drive around the town. I went past Neighbourhood House tonight. When you go past there next, just have a look at how beautiful that is, that area in front of it. That can be exactly the same in Victory Square. So I think we've got to get the, if we're going to make Murray Street vibrant, it's good for murals. Everything's been done. I think it's good and I support it. But we've got to get the landowners on board. And the landowners aren't very happy people. They've just got lots of things called dollars.
Thank you, Councillor Sample. That's the case. I'll allow a short reply if you'd like, Mayor, and then we'll put the motion. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, it's been a collaborative process tonight to get to the end of this. I think it's a good motion. I think it covers off on the will of the meeting. And I think there's been some great ideas thrown in and also some clarification. So I think that this is a motion that we can all support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on now to motion 7.6, policy review. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? We have an officer's recommendation. Do we have a mover? It's like pulling teeth tonight. So, come on. Anyone? Deputy Mayor Shanks, you're moving that motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, only quickly, Chair. I mean, I sort of read through it and I think the proposed amendments are minor to a degree. And to me, it just read as a matter of process.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do we have a seconder for that? Seconder? Motion, okay, thank you. Councillor Hennessy, before the motion lapsed, yeah. Councillor, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. Yeah, no, I've been around long enough that I remember when this started. So yes, it's good to see it updated. I just note that given the discussion earlier about proposed, I think it was the proposed additional flagpoles in Pioneer Park, we might need to look at the policy and perhaps amend it for that. But other than that, I think this is a good way forward.
Mayor, you'd like to speak to that?
Yes, in Pioneer Park, I think the RSL want to put up a New Zealand flag. I think that's a policy now, and that's not included in the flags policy. So
Okay.
I think it might need to be amended to include that capacity, because otherwise they won't be able to put one up. in Anzac Day, and that won't be very good at all, really. So I just thought I'd raise that.
Thank you, Mayor. David, can you provide some clarification on that?
So through the chair, yes, as per the report going to March council meeting, the RSL are intending to have 2 additional flagpoles put up in Pioneer Park, either side of the existing flagpole, with the intention that on Anzac Day, they can fly the New Zealand flag to commemorate the full Anzac. And then outside of those times, we would be flying the state flag, and on the other pole, the Aboriginal flag. So we can make that amendment into the policy in my mind of minor technical nature, which the CEO has delegation to do under point 3.
So are you moving that amendment, Mayor? Policy, or is it just, it's tech, because it's technical, so it can be done by the CEO. Mayor. So you'd like to amend the motion, Mayor, to have that included in there, or is it as amended? Okay. Are you amenable to that, Deputy Mayor? To that change? Yep. And Councillor Hennessy, you are fantastic. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. In that case, are you happy for me to put that, Deputy Mayor? All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Right. Now on to item 8, information reports. So we have an officer's recommendation for 8.1. Someone like to move that way, Mayor?
Happy to move on block 8.1, 8.2 and 8.3.
Is there a seconder to move those on block? Councillor Davies, you're happy to second? Would you like to speak? Oh, did you want to speak on those reports? Sorry. No, didn't. Councillor Davies, would you like to speak?
Yeah, well, just I guess to thanks for the legal street art walls update. I was the one that requested that in the last council. I think obviously it's pretty tied up in what walls private business owners will allow us to use and such from our last discussion. So in terms of moving forward, I guess we'll see, we'll wait a little and see, but yeah, some interesting stuff in there.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Would anyone else like to speak to those reports? We'll go to Councillor Koch and then Councillor Hennessy.
Through the chair, I've got some questions about the 8.1.
Yep.
Okay. Yep, the first one is about the canteen sales. That you've got the revenue 44,000 and you've got the cost 32,000. And it looks like there's a $10,000 profit. Does that include the wages?
Natasha?
Through the chair, no, it does not. Just cost of goods sold.
Through the chair again, I'm just concerned that we are subsidising through our wages activities that aren't profitable, like running a canteen that's actually potentially going backwards. I'm just concerned because it does say in there to, so that people have a better experience, but that's at quite a cost to council, I would have thought. And it says here that there's no salary overtime. So how does that work? So it's people actually working outside normal hours. So how come there's no overtime? Are people just not getting overtime on weekends or in the evenings?
So that's a question about overtime and staffing, is it, Natasha?
Through the chair, with those staff, they're casual staff that work in the evenings on the weekends, and there's one flat rate. In regards to the canteen specifically, the staff that are there in the evenings and on the weekends are there for the whole centre to provide supervision for all the higher groups, and they also work in the canteen. So there's not a direct cost that can be separated. Those staff wages run the whole facility and supervise the user groups and often work in the skating programs as well.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. Do you have one, you allow one more question? Oh, it's 3 questions per councillor, but
I didn't know.
There is. Oh,
no.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is the barriers. It looks like the the men's shed is building barriers. They built barriers. I thought there was a grant in to get new barriers. So is that going to, are they going to be obsolete if the new barriers come in?
Through the chair again, with the barriers, it was very difficult to find new ones. That we needed something specifically purpose-built for our situation and our stadium. So we went out on a procurement process, but we didn't get any interest. So we actually approached the men's shed to see if they would do one of two things. Refurbish a number of our existing barriers and also manufacture some more lightweight barriers to add to the collection and what's needed in the stadium.
Yes, councillor Kosh.
Yeah, just through Chair, I thought there was a grant application has gone in for new barriers. That was the question.
Is it?
But
Apologies, councillor. Councillor, sorry, apologies. There is something in the report regarding a grant that North Vikings are applying for. They refer to it as barriers, but it's actually their rink. And sorry, the terminology got me confused because obviously we've been working on with the men's shed and the barrier design. Apologies for that.
One more question. Yeah, councillor Kosh.
yeah, last one is who's Pintos? One of the user groups. On Pioneer Park, on Princess Park. Pintos.
Through the chair. Yes, it's one of our user groups. I think they're a small pony horse group.
Thank you. That's fine. Sorry, councillor Kosh, I'm going to move on. Just there's 5 questions. Yeah. That's how you can still speak to the motion. But yes, we're going to move on now because there's a few questions. Would anyone else like to ask questions or speak to the motion? Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report on community engagement update. It's very useful and enlightening to see all of the proposed engagement, the direction that staff take towards this, and I look forward to it. I particularly found the information about the new charter and policy that the LGA is proposing, and I look forward to that turning up very soon so that we can keep up to date, because what I'm reading is starting to become a bit dated in terms of community engagement. I notice on page 52 of 72 in the public consultation policy that we will do things like a community email database that will be able to consult with community representative groups and use social media. So I guess I'm not yet seeing some of that. And I think that's where we need to focus on some of our community engagement. I noticed that there's been some discussion online just in this last week about the creation of an email database that we can communicate with residents. And I look forward to that growing quickly, because I think we are not quite making it by just putting things in the newspapers, nor adding the occasional posts. We need to have a more direct mail system, and I think email is the way to go. So thank you for this, and I look forward to continuing to be updated on community engagement.
So I think that was a comment from councillor Hennessy rather than a question. So if we could just amend that. Thank you. Yes, thank you, councillor Hennessy. Councillor Kosh, would you like to speak to the motion? Another question. We'll go to others first to see whether anyone else has anything they'd like to say. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to 8.2, the community engagement of it. It's good to get these reports and be able to baseline, where we sit and the up and coming changes. I was reading through and also picking up on some of those tools and techniques we use. And look, there isn't a silver bullet to this. I'm going in my 5th year, and even on the weekend I went to a community meeting, and I was being accused of not engaging with the community on a certain item. And by me, I mean, you know, council didn't engage with us and everything like that. And I said, well, actually, it was in the newspaper. Oh, I don't read the local newspaper. Oh, okay. Well, it was actually shared on social media as well. Oh, I'm not on Facebook. Oh, right. Okay. So how would you like to be engaged? Well, you know, letters, you know, we get rates notices. Oh, well, the rates notices are where we advertise the Your Voice platforms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I don't read those. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, and people could understand in the room because they were aligning with the sentiment until I reversed the questions. And it got people thinking, and they were going, well, I like to be contacted via email. Well, I'm on social media. And those discussions were really informative, and also showed me what staff go through in this space daily. But I think these sorts of reports allow the elected body to be able to understand the process that's involved and what certain engagement parameters are applied with certain items. And also I do acknowledge that some of the items that we go out for community engagement aren't necessarily sexy items either. So it is hard. So it's our job to figure out how we get that engagement through. But having this definitely helps us understand areas that I think we can improve on, I think is on some social media platforms. And that's not to say we're not improving. I have seen movement in this space in the last few years. And I'd like to be able to see a bit more movement. I like the idea of an email database, noting, yes, that won't capture our overall population, but you know, we're in 2023, a lot of us do use emails, so it will capture a big population. I'd also like to understand how we can broaden that same example that I've just given you to go out to the community and ask, look, how would you like to be engaged? And actually start getting back some of those answers, because I think it would be a massive mixed bag. And putting that question back into the community would actually be not only informative for us, but it actually would get people thinking on, well, hang on, I'm very quick to say no one engages with me, but in reality, there are this platform that I'm not a part of. So how do I get involved? It just changes the narrative slightly. And again, that was just a very local recent experience on the weekend that I found a bit of a funny social experiment that I played with these people. Little did they know. But look, again, this particular item was very handy to read, and to be honest, I've still got some more reading to do, because I did read through the LGA stuff and there was some stuff there, the language I couldn't quite digest in the time I was trying to. So I know I need to get back to it. But yeah, happy to support that recommendation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion before? All right, we'll go back to Councillor Kosh one last time.
3, the legal street art walls. I mean, I've walked past Morford Street Bridge plenty of times. I'd just like to know what procedures you'd have in place to deal with inappropriate images, language, derogatory comments, etc., etc. I think that can happen. Yeah.
Dave, maybe.
So through the chair, this report isn't actually saying that we're going to have a legal street wall. It's noting a report on legal street walls and what the options may be. In the event the council determined that it wanted one, it'll be part of our regular regime in terms of monitoring. We'd also understand, depending on the process, if it's similar to the Canberra sites where they're bookable and you have it for a period of time, then obviously you'd be inspecting the artwork during development and completion, and then regular checking. And our process in terms of Town of Gawler regarding offensive graffiti, it is removed as soon as practical. So we lodge requests through to our depot team and they're out there, or if our graffiti removal volunteers happen to be out and about, they can do it as well. But our depot staff take care of that normally within a couple of hours of the request being lodged.
Did you have any further questions, Councillor Kosh? No, that's it. Fantastic. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion before that's put? No. Are you happy if I put that Mayor Redmond. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, moving on now to item 9, items listed for discussion. There's none. Item 10, are there any questions without notice? No, there's no questions without notice. So number 11, are there any motions without notice? No, fantastic. In that case, I'll close the meeting at 9:09 PM and the next ordinary meeting will be on Tuesday, the 9th of May, 2023, and that will commence at 7 PM. Thank you.